Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. This is NFA Live. Every single Thursday, we are either on my channel, Guy's channel, or Rob's channel. This week, it is here. We're going to go through some questions. How are you guys both doing today?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Not too bad. Not too bad. Market's up. The comments are very positive, so I'm pretty happy.
It's amazing, isn't it? What a $90,000 Bitcoin will do. Crazy.
It's crazy. Or what Bitcoin dominance over 60 will do.
I mean, well, that's the thing. We're going to talk about some of that stuff today. It's like the sentiment is great, the mood is good. Winter alt's gonna actually catch up, But let's go ahead and start with the first question. And I might seem somewhat obvious to some people, but you never know what reasons people might have. But price of Bitcoin's gone up a lot in the last couple of weeks. Really since September, it's been moving up, putting in higher lows, higher highs. What do you guys think the general main drivers of that are? And Guy, we can start with you. Like, what do you think is the primary reason that the price of Bitcoin is essentially going parabolic right now?
Well, as you may have been aware, there was I think you guys elected a new president recently that has somewhat changed the mood in the United States. I mean, look, before the election, we were saying that anything was an improvement on the Biden administration as far as crypto goes. And but I think there wasn't any sort of no one knew for sure whether Trump was going to win. Obviously, we knew that he was making all the right noises and being very pro crypto, but we didn't know for sure. And then obviously when he did, and I think that has been compounded by the fact that the Republicans have the Senate and now the House as well. So they've got total control of all three of those branches, all three big decision making branches. And quite apart from Trump getting in, there were some big scalps on the night, weren't there? Sherrod Brown, I think, who has been one of the biggest opponents of the crypto industry in the United States, is gone. And the only way it would have been better for crypto would have been if Elizabeth Warren had lost. But it doesn't look like she's going to be able to have anything like the sort of influence that she's enjoyed the last 4 years. So essentially, the largest market in the world, a country that is, that not only has the capital, but also has the enthusiasm. Americans have a lot of enthusiasm for crypto, and that has been completely unlocked now. And that's why we're seeing, I think, so much demand for Bitcoin, not just from what I can see, from everyone. We've got massive inflows into the ETFs. That suggests both retail and institutions. All this talk around a strategic reserve, which I know we're going to talk about in a bit more detail later, but I think just the fact that is being talked about is insanely bullish. And I think I'm hearing rumors that that there may be sort of nation states now trying to front run the United States and start getting their hands on Bitcoin. But I think perhaps maybe if you tie all these things together, maybe the kind of main reason why Bitcoin is doing so well is that everyone, the smart money knows that Trump is going to spend. Both Harris and Trump were always going to spend. Neither of them talked in any way about reducing that $36 trillion debt pile. So the dollar is only heading in one direction. And that makes the case for a hedge against that. Bitcoin is the ideal hedge. Anyone can get their hands on it. And yeah, I mean, what's the bear case for Bitcoin right now? I don't see it personally.
Rob, what do you think? Is that do you generally agree with the sort of what Guy was saying about the new administration coming in, the fact that they're gonna, continue with the spending? I know that there's certain like ideas of cutting stuff. And they recently launched the Department of Government Efficiency.
Exactly.
I was like, wow, life is a meme now. But to be fair, I think it always was. But no, I mean, do you generally I agree with Guy's assessment? Are there any other reasons that the price is up, or did Guy cover all the main points?
I mean, yeah, for the most part. I mean, that last part about, that both administrations weren't talking about cutting. We know that now we have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, and they're going to be heading up that, like you said, the Department of Government Efficiency, which I got to tell you is perfect, because if you invested into Doge, who's really happy today? The Dogecoin millionaire, because he is the one that bought so much and round trip his bags. He is like the poster child for round tripping. And today he's, taking that victory lap. But when I take a look at this, I'm like, if they can cut a little bit over there, we know they're going to be spending. That's great. But I think the bigger question is, and I watched both your guys' videos. I know that we're always looking behind, or we're looking in the past to see where we're going. But the question I have for both of you, right, is I have a question with a question. Do you think we would be here if we weren't in the economic state that we are? Do you think we would be here if inflation was going up? Do you think we would be here if the Fed wasn't doing what it was actually supposed to be doing? Do you think we would be here if there wasn't, the tides of economics and actual output being positive? I just don't think that we actually would. I think everything kind of lines up. It's good that it's in the 4-year cycles. I mean, it kind of just kind of hits like this. But I know that like CPI numbers just came out yesterday, and it went up a little bit, even though it was expected. It went from year over year. CPI was 2.6, and previously it was 2.4. Core CPI was 3.3 across the board. So they're still going to cut rates. They're still going to have that issue. But I still think that I think one of the bigger drivers was the campaign promises made by Trump and him actually getting elected. Now the big question is he going to keep those promises? And I think that's the bigger issue.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the things he spoke about, in fact, was a strategic reserve. Right. I was actually there at that talk in Nashville when it was announced, and I guess that is sort of going to the next question, Rob. What are the odds of it actually happening? I mean, and Guy said that he thought there was some chatter about some other nation state sort of trying to front run the United States. But I guess the question is like, what do you consider the likelihood to be that they actually have a strategic reserve for Bitcoin? Is that one of the promises he actually follows through on, or is it just kind of something that we kind of wait and then we're like, remember us?
Usually, look, I've been around long enough to know that's usually what happens with politicians. They make great promises and they lure you in, and then all of a sudden, like, yeah, we're going to get to that. And then when it doesn't happen, they're like, Congress, I really pushed this side, but we don't have a supermajority. In the Senate, we're at, I think, 53, and we need 60, because if not, they can filibuster us. And when they filibuster, they can just pretty much elongate this whole process out, so we don't get to pass. So it's those damn fill in the blank other people, right? So at this point, they're going to say, those Democrats didn't let us do it. The House, of course, they have the House. They can pass these things through, but then it has to get to the Senate. I don't believe you can just do an executive order and just go strategic reserve. That's it. I think it has to pass through. And of course, that'll take some convincing. And maybe it would have been better if Elizabeth Warren wouldn't be one of those people, but she is. And she's got some people that don't agree with this whole process. So if it happens, great. If it doesn't, we still have massive tailwinds. I mean, look at how well the ETF has done. Look how much institution investment is here. Look how many. I mean, there's even talk on top of what you guys just said about nation states, about corporations and businesses putting on their balance sheet, and it's going to be revealed later on. And of course, why wouldn't they? So for me, if it happens, first of all, it happens. Who was it? Mike Novogratz. He said if that does happen, Bitcoin goes to $500,000. And I was like, finally, somebody agrees with my Bitcoin price prediction. But if it does, it'll get crazy. And if it doesn't, it'll still be good. Maybe we hit 200,000. Regardless, I think we're all in a good position right here.
Someone says in the betting markets that the odds of it being approved are 32%, which, I mean, look, if you had asked us 4 years ago, the odds of a Bitcoin strategic reserve, I mean, being 1/3 chance, like that's 33% more than we probably would have set. We probably would have thought. So, Guy, what are your thoughts? Are we, is it actually is it feasible to do something like that, especially so soon? I mean, we essentially went from not even being aware, not even fully thinking that the ETF was going to be approved, and now the discussion has moved from that to strategic reserve. So, what do you think?
Yeah, well, in a way, I agree with Rob, and I think one thing that kind of supports that argument that maybe this is, maybe this is something that will happen a little further out, or maybe this is a little implausible at the moment, is the fact that kind of Trump did either deliberately or accidentally kind of leave himself a bit of a get out when he talked about this, because I think he can. Or the US already has something in the region of over 200,000 bitcoins anyway. That Silk Road seizure, the stuff that it hasn't managed to sell yet. Now, assuming the outgoing administration doesn't try and sell all that off before Trump takes office, that's still a pretty healthy reserve. So I think Trump sort of has the get out of like, well, we're just going to hodl that. Like, we're not going to sell anymore like we have been doing. Yeah. Which would be extremely bullish, because the US government selling has been one of those kind of market sort of overhangs, if you like, that have kind of spooked us periodically along the way, a bit like Mt. Gox distributions, things like that. The fact that the US might suddenly start dumping Bitcoin like Germany did, although that did not turn out well for Germany. So I think there is that kind of get out. Obviously, Cynthia Lummis is the one who's sort of really pushing for an actual strategic reserve. She's putting forward that Bitcoin Act, which would actually see the government accumulate. I think it's sort of 1 million Bitcoin over 4 years or so, or 4 or 5 years or something like that. So yeah, that perhaps may be a little out. Who knows? Maybe that could be something for the JD Vance Barron Trump administration to take on further down the line. What I will say, though, to counter Rob's argument, yes, obviously the Republicans don't have the 60-seat majority in the Senate, so these things, this would have to be debated, and there could be opposition to it. What I'd say, though, is that from the Democrat point of view, what do they have to gain from opposing crypto? Like, crypto didn't necessarily lose them this election, but it sure as hell didn't help. Like, look what happened to Sherrod Brown. He was way ahead in Ohio. He was comfortable, and Fair Shake came in and they pumped millions of dollars into Bernie Moreno's campaign, and now Sherrod Brown is toast. He's gone. And I think other Democrats will be looking. I mean, let's face it. Some Democrats never were anti-crypto. Like this thing was. It was never. You're red, you're crypto. You're blue, you're anti-crypto. There was always some blurring. There are pro-crypto Democrats, and I think, obviously, I think the Elizabeth Warrens of this world won't change their mind. You can't reason with them. But I think there will be other Democrats, maybe who had tight races, or maybe who are sort of just more progressive and forward thinking, who are like, what's the point of opposing crypto? What's the point? Like, they either they think they like it anyway, or they think, well, I'm not a huge fan, but is this a hill I want to die on? I don't think so. Like, look what happened to Sherrod Brown. So maybe the Republicans, maybe Trump doesn't need a supermajority in the Senate. I just think, like I said, what's the bear case for Bitcoin right now? What is there to be gained from opposing crypto? It's surely there are other battles that the Democrats would be better focused on.
I mean, it's a fair point for sure, because what voter out there is going to vote for a party just because they're against crypto, right? Not many, but there probably would be people that would vote against politicians that if the voter is pro crypto, they might specifically not vote for politicians that are anti crypto. I mean, I think that's a really excellent point to make, and we've actually talked about that for the last couple of years. that, you know, it's only a matter of time before all the sort of the anti-crypto politicians probably eventually get voted out, you know, or the new generation just eventually takes over, right? I mean, I think a lot of times, you know, the sort of older generations can have a hard time, you know, making way for sort of the new, because they don't understand it. But I mean, it does seem like it's only a matter of time. So let's go to the next question. We've actually had a lot of people, you know, we've talked a lot about Bitcoin already, but we've gotten a lot of questions here about ETH. Someone says, does it have to wait for QE? Someone says, ETH Bitcoin, please. Someone says, ETH Bitcoin back to 0.035. When will it catch a bid? Only when Bitcoin dominance breaks down. So it kind of raises the question. I mean, you know, ETH it's not doing awful, right? I mean, it is at 3,200, and clearly my view about it going home was incorrect. So, but ETH Bitcoin has gone to a pretty low level, right? It's gone to a pretty low level, and I guess people are wondering, like, when does it actually catch a bid? And I guess the sort of the flip question of that, which is Rob's favorite topic, is when does Bitcoin dominance actually top? Guy, what do you think about that question?
Yeah, that's a tough one because yeah, I mean, as you say, ETH has really been struggling to catch a break. I was kind of curious to see what the result, the DevCon conference happening over in Bangkok at the moment, and I was sort of kind of expecting ETH to get a bit more of a bounce from that, because, you know, we're now entering that phase of the market where announcements, you know, even just announcements of announcements, which crypto does better than anyone, you know, they can be enough to pump these things. They can be enough to get excitement going and hype around the ecosystem. So I'm kind of surprised that ETH hasn't sort of caught a bump from that. And thinking about it, I guess, you know, if we're looking at a lot of this money coming in, perhaps now, perhaps being new retail, I still think Ethereum doesn't quite have the selling point that Bitcoin does at the moment. It's too, you know, it's more complicated. And we talked about this with the Ethereum ETFs, didn't we? It's like the case for a spot Bitcoin ETF is very clear. The case for investment in Bitcoin is very clear. Ethereum is a bit more complicated. So I think, yeah, there's still that kind of complexity. If you're talking about new retail, you know, it's still very expensive because it's got a high sticker price. So, you know, there's maybe not that sort of appeal. And new retail kind of heading into things like meme coins, as we've seen over the past kind of 24 hours or so, you know, with these kind of meme coins suddenly being listed on the likes of Coinbase and Robinhood. So ETH, I think, is still struggling for kind of mind share and for narrative. So, I mean, I can see Bitcoin dominance climbing, or, you know, maintaining this level for a while at the moment. I think the demand is still there. You know, 100K seems, I wouldn't bet against 100K by the end of the year. I mean, kind of the way things are going, I wouldn't bet against 100K by the end of the month. So, you know, I think Bitcoin dominance is here to stay for at least a little longer. At least until Ethereum can get a bit more excitement around it and its whole ecosystem. And of course, that ties into the kind of regulatory aspect of things as well. You know, I think Ethereum and Ethereum-based projects have been hit a lot by regulation in the US, and maybe more clarity around that is needed, rather than just euphoria about the fact that we've got a new administration. You know, maybe we actually need to see things like Gary Gensler actually stepping down, or actually, you know, being replaced or whatever, before Ethereum really takes off.
Yeah, it looks like I just checked the betting markets. It looks like investors think there's a 74% chance that Bitcoin will hit 100K before the end of the year. Which, I mean, it's already hit 93.
Yeah, Ben, are you looking at Polymarket, or where are you looking?
I'm just looking at the comments that people are writing.
Well, that's actually probably a pretty good indicator. Yeah, if you look at Polymarket all over the place, that place has a ton of different things you can bet on. It's not just like who's going to win the presidency. Now it's, you know, strategic reserve. Now it's who's gonna get into that. Now it's going to be, and there's like, and then, you know, what kind of dominance will it go to? Everything's there, Polymarket, if you want to gamble away. But yeah,
Rob, what about you? I mean, when it comes to ETH, what's it gonna do here? I mean, I guess and I think like I'm sort of thinking of it, and I've always thought about it like this, right? I feel like the USD pair is kind of irrelevant, but for a lot of new people, they're not gonna agree with that statement. But for the people that have been here since the merge, when the merge happened, ETH was at its Bitcoin valuation was at like 0.085. And now, we're at the end of 2024 and the valuation is at 0.035. I mean, that is a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
And so, I've always thought that the bottom was going to be between 0.03 to 0.04, but now we're at 0.035, 0.034, and it hasn't really caught a bid, So, I mean, what do you think? Like, where do you think it's, why is it stuck on Struggle Street, I guess is the question.
First of all, holy smokes, that's true. I was just looking at the comment section, bouncing back and forth. Throw out my screen, would you? That just happened.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saw that yesterday.
Look at that. Is it at the 14th already? Yeah.
Rob, this was a full day ago. I mean, that was when Bitcoin was like 75K. Come on.
Unbelievable. I didn't hear about this till right now. That's amazing. So I guess, suppression is alive and well here in the US. I don't know if that's actually the US or not, but yeah, that's what we got. Just to go back to that question about, where it is and valuations, it makes sense. But like, when I take a look at Ethereum, I just think sometimes it's just undervalued. And when I take a look at undervaluation, not this one, like maybe people are just sleeping on Ethereum because they just see like the price of like Bitcoin going up and Solana going up and everything else going up. But like, if you take a look at the ETFs, it flipped positive, about a week ago or so. And we've had some actually good inflows. I mean, it's not like the Bitcoin ETF, obviously, right? But it's not doing, horribly. But I will say, like, as far as the ROI, it is substantially different this cycle. And you can just see that this is the current cycle here. This is return on investment. Ben knows this because it's his website. Right now we're at 3 as opposed to last cycle at 50. And you can change this for like actual absolute time values. But I mean, it's been quite a laggard moving forward. And one of those reasons is because of this. Like I know people just use Ethereum and they just look at it, but everybody in the comments just answer me a question. Does anybody use layer 2s for anything else besides just price appreciation? Like, have you ever used, say, like Polygon to move USDC instead of using Ethereum and USDC and paying way, way lower fees? I'm just curious because I just did this. I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and when I look at layer 2, it's not like I'm a big, like, this is the greatest thing of all time. It actually kind of sucks, but you can use it and it does work. And like Guy talked about 5 weeks ago or so, there's a reason why BlackRock picked Ethereum for BUIDL, because it does not go down and it's battle tested. And it doesn't matter if you're making $1 million or $1 trillion assets under management or 13 trillion. If your product goes down and it's on you, you lose heavy. So yeah, it may not be like the best thing, but maybe it will be, maybe just a laggard right now. I'm not for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is I think the whole. Sorry, go ahead.
Go on, man. No, I think I've said it before. Like Ethereum is, I think it's the sort of thing you write off at your peril. Like stuff is being built. A heck of a lot of stuff is already built on there. A heck of a lot of stuff is being built on there. And BlackRock, that example you gave, Rob, is the perfect one. But there are, institutions are putting a lot of stuff, a lot of information, a lot of data up on Ethereum. So I wouldn't bet against it.
Yeah, I'm not going to like put all my portfolio into it, but I'm still going to stay where it's at. I've been accumulating since 2022, so why sell right now?
I think I'm going to stick with my own canned response as always, is that like Ethereum does outperform Bitcoin in QE bull markets. but in QT bull markets, it underperforms Bitcoin. That's exactly what happened last cycle, right? It wasn't until QE returned that ETH started outperforming Bitcoin. So it's kind of like, it kind of goes back to this whole Bitcoin dominance thing. You know, I think everyone tries to keep front running it, but until quantitative tightening is actually over, right, is not the most likely outcome that dominance just keeps going up, right? I mean, it just seems like people are going to pour into the least risky asset in the cryptoverse, because I mean, there's still this reality that quantitative tightening is still continuing. And I mean, you could argue that while they have cut rates, they haven't cut them enough to justify the altcoin market outperforming Bitcoin. Maybe one more rate cut is what the altcoin market needs. But speaking of, you know, at the beginning of 2022, I put my maxi hat on. I just said it's time to become a Bitcoin maxi for the next few years. But now that dominance has gone above 60%, and I've already started hedging with some ETH here, because I do think that it will likely go up against Bitcoin next year. But I guess the question is like, can you guys shill me some alts? I'm just curious, like, you know, I'm curious, which ones are you guys watching the most? Like, because I mean, I think a lot of them are really underperforming Bitcoin. It's not just ETH, by the way. You know, it's not. I mean, a lot of the coins from 2021 are underperforming Bitcoin, right? It's not just ETH. What I think is really interesting this cycle is that some of the coins, you know, the coins that have been doing the best are Bitcoin and meme coins. And then like a lot of the stuff in between that is not doing as well collectively. So I am curious, which alts do you guys find interesting that actually are keeping pace with Bitcoin, maybe even outperforming it, or only slightly underperforming it? Because I think the reason I ask it is because normally it's the altcoins that are doing well against Bitcoin during phases like this that then continue to do well once QE comes back, right? It's the same idea. It's like the winners continue to win and the losers continue to lose. And you shouldn't cut your winners for your losers, which I think is what a lot of people do. They sell the ones that are doing well because they're like, oh, well, that alt's going to start pumping, and then just never does. So, Guy, I'll start with you on this one. Are there a couple of altcoins that you find interesting that are starting to wake up some?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess the big performer for my portfolio in recent weeks has been Sui. That has comfortably outperformed Bitcoin, and indeed, you know, a lot of the rest of the market certainly before we had this recent pump. So yeah, I mean, that's one that I've talked about a lot. I think that is, you know, the big Solana competitor of this cycle, which is a perfectly good narrative in itself. But you know, there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more to it than that. I think what they're doing well is looking to onboard Web 2 developers into Web3 by using this Move programming language that was, you know, that's all a result of them having spun out from Facebook after, you know, that Libra digital currency project that Facebook were working on was kind of shut down. So that's one that's already performed very well for me, and that's one that I'm excited about, you know, for the rest of the cycle. I think that's got a huge amount of potential. And I know, like a lot of, actually Nick interviewed Adani, who's one of the co-founders of Sui, on More Coin Bureau recently, and it was just fascinating. Like he's a very knowledgeable guy and a very good kind of salesman for the project, which really helps as well. So I think, you know, that I think is something that should do really well and already has. You know, I've got to say, like, over the last 24 hours or so, I bought a bit of Pepe a few weeks ago, and that's been, you know, that's outperformed almost everything, which is extraordinary for, you know, for such a high market cap meme. But you know, it got that listing on Robinhood and that listing on Coinbase. I think you know, that's why I got it, because I thought it was a very strong meme. I think it's one of the few meme coins that actually has like a proper meme behind it, like an old school meme. Doge is another one. Like the Doge meme is old. Pepe is like the Pepe meme. Pepe the Frog has been around for 20 odd years or something. And I just think that it really works as a meme, and I think it's got all the kind of it's got all the things that retail traders look for. So that's why I was pleasantly surprised, but not overly surprised, that Robinhood and Coinbase have listed it, because I think that's exactly the sort of thing that retail will look to ape into. And another one I'm interested in, I haven't bought any, and I may not for a while, but I think I think DeFi is going to could be one of the big winners from this new regulatory environment in the United States. DeFi projects have been absolutely hammered by kind of rampaging SEC, and the industry hasn't been that niche of the industry hasn't been choked off, but it's really suffered. And yet, it's still here. These DeFi protocols are, for the most part, working extraordinarily well. Things like Aave that have been around for a long time. I mean, Aave is not performing well at the moment, but I think is a tried and tested protocol. But one that I'm interested in is Athena, because again, this is one that hasn't it hasn't come close to outperforming Bitcoin recently, but I think as we see more rotation this cycle, I think as people start, people who've done this, who've been on this ride before, as they start to cash out some of their profits, take profits either on Bitcoin or some of their altcoin holdings, I think they will look to try and rotate some of those profits into DeFi to try and get yield. And Athena, we were a little bit skeptical of it when it first launched, because it's so complex, and if it gets as big as many people think it will, then that's obviously there's an element of risk to the wider ecosystem. But so far, it's performed really well, and I think that could be people's opportunity to go and rotate their profits in and get some yield, and I think that could really benefit. So there's three. Only I cheated slightly because only the first two have actually outperformed Bitcoin, but I think most of these will in the long term once that rotation begins.
Hey, Guy, real quick before I forget, you guys, I saw a post about how you guys were going to get into Bitcoin OS.
Yeah.
Which is essentially turning Cardano into a layer 2, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like
it's I'm sure the numerous Cardano fans in the chat will disagree with the semantics of that. But this integration is, it's great for Cardano because it's bringing kind of Bitcoin liquidity into Cardano's ecosystem. But Nick is very, very bullish on Bitcoin, Bitcoin ecosystem, Bitcoin DeFi, Bitcoin layer 2s. He's doing a lot of research into some of those upcoming projects. And funnily enough, actually, I should have mentioned it earlier when we were talking about Ethereum. That could be a threat to Ethereum that maybe people aren't taking enough notice of. Because obviously Ethereum's benefit at the moment is that if you want to build something and leverage its security, it's the best. It's the most decentralized after Bitcoin. Right. And obviously, it was created because Bitcoin was so difficult to build on. But now that these layer 2 solutions are coming for Bitcoin, I think that could present a bit of a threat to Ethereum, because obviously the Bitcoin network is even more decentralized and even more secure. It's the most secure network on the planet. So that could be a bit of a headwind for Ethereum, and indeed like the wider crypto ecosystem as well. But I think there's definitely a lot of potential there. Bitcoin OS, and there are a lot of projects working on things like that.
Interesting. All right, thanks.
Rob, what are your what altcoins are you dabbling in these days? We actually got about 4,000 live viewers. That's probably one of the bigger NFA live streams we've had. If you guys are if you haven't hit the like button, please do so. But yeah, Rob, what are you What are you thinking as far? What altcoins are you dabbling in these days?
Well, first of all, thanks everybody for watching. And it is nice when we have a good bull run to be happy and not try to kill each other, which is I think appropriate. But if I gotta, I'll just echo Guy's sentiment and just show this screen from this website called Into the Cryptoverse. This is my Pepe dominance chart that I created on the workbench. If you want to do anything on Ben's site, you can do stuff like this. And just to show you how well Pepe has done as far as dominance, I would point this out that Pepe dominance was at 0.156 in the 5th of November, and it has now doubled to 0.3 as of 14th of November. So Pepe dominance is raging. I mean, yeah, Bitcoin dominance is cute and nice and stuff, but I mean, Pepe dominance is doing pretty good. So
yeah, let's talk about actually matters, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'll do a whole video on this one, but it's a funny thing because like we all know about meme coins, we all know they're gambling, right? We all agree, cool. But if they're gambling and we know that, then it's okay to have a little bit of fun, right? So what I did this video. This is October 13th, and this is my retirement account, my Roth IRA retirement account. And what I did is I put obviously the most in the Bitcoin because I think in 10, 20 years, because I'm rapidly approaching this age, less than 10 years actually, I know that Bitcoin will be around. I know it for a fact. I feel pretty good about that. Ethereum, okay. Then I got Sol, ton. Then I have gold and silver because they've been around for thousands of years. Why not? And then I put in about 2% of Pepe, Bonk, Dog Whip Hat, and Doge. Why would I do that? It sounds pretty crazy, right? A retirement account. What are you, a moron? Sometimes. But I know that they're going to outperform Bitcoin in the short term, just like Ben talks about, just like Guy talks about. So with this one, I updated it and I put in SWI, thanks to Guy and his videos on SWI, and that's outperformed as well. And like we can see that over the last 24 hours, Pepe's up, I don't know how much this is, 58%. And then Bonk is up as well because of listings. And as of right now, this is my retirement account. And as Doge, Pepe, Bonk, and Dog with Hat were the laggards, well, Doge is number 3. Pepe and Bonk are just above ton, gold, and silver. Why did I do that? It's obvious because as time goes on, I think this is going to be the play for moving into the next cycle. I said that we wouldn't really see too much until after the elections. I said that many times. We wouldn't see too much happening until 2025. And if you guys think that this is big, just wait till 2025. So the plan is to sell those items within my Roth IRA account, the meme coins, because they're not going nowhere. They're not going to be here in 10 years, I'm pretty sure. And that goes right into Bitcoin. And that's it. So like those are the ones I'm looking at and moving forward.
I think the biggest lesson that a lot of people can take away from with altcoins is that, and I think a lot of times people use sort of Bitcoin maxi as a sort of a derogatory term, but I think it's more so just like a reflection of how the cryptoverse works, right? There's 3 years where dominance goes up, and then there's 1 year where it goes down. And next year is likely the year that it goes down. And there's nothing wrong with rotating altcoin profits back into Bitcoin before it begins its 3-year Bitcoin dominance journey. So like, we've been on that dominance journey since 2022 began, and where it's gone from 38 to now 61. At the end of 2025, there's going to be a lot of people likely dunking on Bitcoin dominance because it's probably going to be a lot lower than it is today, right? Like a year from now, not like a month from now. In a month, it could actually be higher than it is today. But a year from now, it'll probably be lower. And then I think the right strategy would probably just do exactly what Rob said, is just convert those alts back to Bitcoin and just let it ride until, and for another few years, and then start to diversify. I mean, it really does work out well. And we'll see if it keeps working out well. But yeah. We do. Go ahead.
Hold on, Ben. Yeah, one more thing about that, the Roth IRA. What's great about that is as I trade within that account, it's tax exempt. So if you are like, oh, I don't want to pay the 33, 20, 15%, just do that. You just got to wait until you're old like me, and then you can take it out later.
Yep. We do have some questions. I mean, I did have one more question. It was just, when will alts catch up to Bitcoin? But I mean, I don't my guess is you either think they're not ever going to, or the answer is 2025. I think those are the two answers. Because I mean, normally in halving years, Bitcoin does, relatively better than the altcoin market through the end of the halving year, and then it's the post halving year. So if they're gonna outperform Bitcoin, I imagine it would be next year. But that doesn't mean that some can't. I mean, even Guy was talking about some alts that have already been outperforming Bitcoin, right? It's not that there's none. It's just that you really have to dig through. It's kind of like, you really have to shift through all the stuff to find the few alts that are outperforming Bitcoin in a Bitcoin dominance uptrend. When you're in a Bitcoin dominance downtrend, you can just throw a dart at a wall with 1,000 different alts on it, and there's a good chance that altcoin's outperforming Bitcoin. But there are people, how in like Bitcoin dominance uptrends, there's always like that one guy that's like, yeah, but this alt's outperforming Bitcoin, so Bitcoin dominance is useless.
I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I've never heard that thing.
It's probably you on your alt account doing it to me. But
inverse Dan, yeah, that's exactly. I just attacked you relentlessly on Twitter.
But there's one thing
to brutal.
There's one thing to remember: the reverse is also true. So, in Bitcoin dominance downtrends, there are a few alts that will still underperform Bitcoin, right? So that's why it always makes sense to have, I think, a majority of your portfolio in Bitcoin, because just because Bitcoin dominance goes down doesn't mean that the altcoins you bought are going to outperform it, right? I mean, there's still a good chance that it's everyone else's alt that does well and not yours. So I don't say that to be smart. I mean, I just say it as sort of having been in that position in past cycles where some of the alts I had did well against Bitcoin, and then some are just bleeding forever, and then they never really stopped bleeding. But let's get to some of the audience questions. We do have a few. Someone wants to talk about the stock to flow model. I honestly don't know exactly where. I feel like I remember him saying his target was 1 million. Is that true? Is it really that high?
Let's take a look. I would guess so. Stock to flow is pretty bullish. I know
Nick was talking about it on our news live stream on Monday, and I think, if I remember rightly, there was a fairly wide spread on it. I think maybe the minimum was $250,000, but it was a big spread, like up to maybe $500,000.
Yeah, it's 1 million. I'm looking at it right now.
It's 1 million.
250. Wow. No, you're right, guy. It's like, here, I think this is right. Let me. If this is correct, Bitcoin stock to flow model live chart.
Yeah, what's that horizontal level up there? Like, what's his level in 2025? That line? It looks like it's at 1 million.
On April 2025, 593,000. Towards the end of it, you're looking at 1.2 million. December 15, 2025.
I mean, I sincerely doubt that's going to happen. But
Ben, it's a model. It's always correct.
Yeah. It's kind of like, I used to fight the good fight and argue with people about diminishing returns over and over and over again, because it was like last cycle and everyone was calling for 300K. And it was like, it's not going to go to 300K. That would be doing the same thing it did the cycle before, 100x from the low. And that's just unlikely going to happen. But I don't know. I feel like at some point you got to pick your battles, and it's not really a battle I want to keep fighting.
Yeah. No.
If people want to believe that it's going to go to 1 million, let them believe it, And it probably will eventually. I mean, it probably will eventually. It just probably won't happen next year.
I mean, Saylor. I think Saylor's latest prediction is 13 million, which suggests a very. That's a bear case, yeah. Which suggests that the dollar is going to take an absolute get absolutely pulverized over the next few years. I can only assume that that's got to be the case. You've got to have a very weak dollar to have that strong a Bitcoin.
So speaking of the dollar, I'm glad you brought that up. The dollar right now is so DXY is approaching 107. And I know there's all sorts of like thought process around why altcoins are underperforming Bitcoin, but I think the most obvious answer, beyond like just like, oh well, strategic reserve and all that stuff, but the reality is Bitcoin always outperforms alts at under market conditions like this, where the dollar is going up and the long end of the yield curve is going up, right? So normally when that happens, alts do underperform Bitcoin. So that's the that in figuring out the answer to this question, when does the dollar top? That probably tells you the answer to when does Bitcoin dominance top, and when does when do alts bottom against Bitcoin, is the answer to when does the dollar top. I mean, my answer, and I said this back when the Fed cut rates, is that when they cut, the dollar will likely rally along with the long end. But I do think I think the dollar will top either the very end of this year, so like near the end of December, or very early January. But I would say no later than the second week of January for a top on the dollar. That's my best guess. Do you guys have any other insight into the dollar? Do you disagree with that? What are your thoughts?
I always felt like the dollar, like as Dixie went up, that sometimes it would actually negate the Bitcoin price action. It seemed like as the dollar went up, sometimes Bitcoin would actually cross over and would get a little weaker. But these were only specific instances of time. Like I know, like in 2022, and we can see that the dollar went to 113, or Dixie went to 113. We know what happened at that point for Bitcoin. But I still agree that in 2025 everything happens. And if we're all right here, then this is like a gift for everybody, because you have all this time to accumulate if you want a dollar cost average. I know people will say, well, these prices, they're just way too high. I just can't get into it. Take a look back, go to coinmarketcap.com/historical and click on this time frame 4 years ago and tell me if you think that we were overbought.
Well, the funny thing, Rob, is that you're right. Normally when the dollar goes up, Bitcoin goes down. No. But there are times where it doesn't play out like that. In fact, in Q4 of 2016, the dollar was going up and Bitcoin was also going up.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a similar time, in terms of you had Trump getting elected. And the cycle ROI of Bitcoin looks a lot like the 2016 cycle, So yeah, it's kind of a interesting comparison.
Yeah, a lot of things are lining up just like 2016. If that's the case, then ROI is going to go through the roof. But we'll see.
Yeah, I guess.
Now
go ahead.
So I was wondering aloud, like whether back in the day, you might back in the olden times, in the dark ages, when Donald Trump was not bullish on Bitcoin, I seem to remember him saying something along the lines of like, I'm bullish on the US dollar. That's what I really like.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know whether, obviously he's still bullish on the US dollar, but like, I wonder, just how much that has changed now that he's been orange pilled. Is he going to still, are his policies still going to be geared towards, are they going to be geared towards a strong dollar, or is he going to want a weaker dollar to make US exports more competitive? That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think if he's reasonably smart, he'd want a competitive advantage. And if he knows that America will be the first one to do a reserve, and we have the lion's share, then of course the other countries will follow. And I would assume you would like that position of power instead of a position of weakness, is, trying to front run or buy afterwards. But again, it'll all be game theory, and we'll see how it all plays out. But there's a lot of rumors going around, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are sort of discussing, like, some people say it feels like 2017 right now. This person says it feels like 2017. Someone says it feels like November 2021 to them. It is interesting. I mean, it's always worthwhile to cover all angles, right? So that we know what's going on. And someone wants to, there is something happening. And look, the macro stuff, Rob's favorite topic, you know, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter at all for a long time, right? And then once the markets go down, then people start paying attention to it again. Someone is pointing out that the 10-year and the 3 they say the 3-year, but they're actually referring to the 3-month. It's the 10-year and the 3-month are about to uninvert. And I was looking at that, and it looks like they are how many basis points away from uninverting?
That's
it looks like only 4. They're only 4 basis points from uninverting. So not too far away from uninversion. Is this something that we should ignore? You know, the 2-year uninverted the 10-year a few months ago, and there was a correction in the market, but then you look back and now Bitcoin's $30,000 higher. So I mean, is this something just to kind of ignore for now until initial claims really start moving up? We actually got initial claims data. Someone asked to talk about the job data. We got initial claims data this morning, and it came in at like 216,000. You know, and I've always been of the opinion that until you see 300K, it's not really a red flag, right? Until you see that a 300K print, and we keep not only are we not heading to 300K in terms of, I'm not talking about Bitcoin, guys. Not only are we not heading to 300K initial claims, but we're closer to 200 than 300. We're back down to 216. So is this just something people should not worry about? Is it something to keep in the back of your mind? What do you guys think?
I would say that, you know, who else is thinking about this is Warren Buffett. And someone in the chat said this, and they were correct, that Warren Buffett is sitting on the most amount of cash he's ever sat on. And this is the first time since, I want to say, a decade, or for quite some time, where he hasn't bought back his own stock. And if Warren Buffett is kind of thinking about this, I know people will say, well, he's a boomer, doesn't know what he's doing. I think he does. So if you are worried about the macro, that's a definite one thing to take a look at. And it's just, it doesn't really matter, like, the rationality of it. People know that once you uninvert at a certain amount of time frame, you usually hit a recession. It's happened. Just go back. I think it didn't happen. There was one time in like 1964. Ben would know, or Guy will know.
1967, and then also in like 1995.
Right, but 2 out of how many? So like it's one of those things. Yeah, 11. You know, so like if you think there's a recession is not coming, it's coming. The question is when. So we should always be thoughtful of that. Right.
That's the question. Sometimes it uninverts and the recession's still a year away. Sometimes it uninverts and you're already in one. It's just, you don't know until you look back on it a year later, and then it's obvious, right? But when you're in it, it's like impossible to spot. But I mean, look, initial claims are still really low, and I mean, I would have to imagine that stuff would start to show up there at some point. You know, to sort of give some of those warning signs. But yeah, we'll see. Guy, any other thoughts on it?
No, nothing to add that you guys haven't covered, I think.
Yeah, I think I saw a tweet. I did see a tweet that I was kind of curious about. I guess when Reagan won in 1980, it was kind of a landslide, and then the markets rallied for a few weeks, and then right after the election, or right after, I guess, inauguration, the markets dropped. It wasn't a really big drop. See, I think that's the thing, is like everyone thinks that like yield curve inversion and uninversion has to lead to like 50% corrections like the .com and the financial crisis. But, you know, back then it was just like, you know, 15% or 20%, right? It was a lot tamer than what I think sort of the fear would be. So I think you always have to keep that in mind as well, is you know, there's a lot of different types of things that could happen. But there were a few more questions. Let's just get to those. So one of the things I've seen is that people keep asking about some of these older coins. What do you guys think about Polkadot? Someone was asking about Polkadot. Does it have a chance to come back to life? Or, you know, I mean, if you look at its Bitcoin pair, I mean, you know, you want to basically, I don't know. Like, I mean, you look at its Bitcoin pair, it's never stopped going down. Can it bottom soon against Bitcoin, or like what's going on with Polkadot? Either you guys have an opinion about it?
That's a Guy question.
I mean, I think Polkadot is a good example of one of those projects that kind of has it's so many things right. Like, the idea of a kind of layer zero that the other block that could serve as a sort of hub for blockchains, similar, along the same lines that Cosmos is doing. I think that's a great idea, and I think the interoperability side of it is really important. They just, I think that they lost mind share. I think that's its big problem. Crypto is brutal like this because projects with good tech and good teams that have money to spend, which Polkadot ticks all those boxes, they can still lose mind share. And Polkadot, I think, I think there weren't really many projects on it that kind of really captured the imagination. There was also, as I recall, there wasn't that much utility for the dot coin itself. Because on the parachains you were able to pay fees, as I recall, with the kind of native coins of those parachains rather than use dot. Yeah. So I think that was an issue for it. That said, a project launched on Tuesday, one called Peak, which we're really bullish on. We invested in it. That's built on Polkadot. And when I chatted with the team about that, I said, what made you choose Polkadot? And they just said, we think the tech there is amazing. They were really taken with it. So although it's been struggling, and it's not something I did hold some dot, but I sold it a while ago because I just felt that it wasn't getting that mind share. But it's one of these ones that it would be hard. It would be hard to fully write it off. But certainly, there's so much competition now, and I think the kind of the layer zero idea, this interoperability idea, is kind of struggling as well. Cosmos is having sort of similar issues, although Cosmos, I think, has more projects in its ecosystem that are doing well and getting people excited. It seems to be these kind of monolithic layer ones like Solana and Sui at the moment are sort of they've got the attention and the tech excuse me, the tech, or at least Sui has. Solana is getting there tech-wise.
I think Ryan wins the comment of the day here. I saw it and I could not help but laugh. Like, I was just like, dot looks great on its EOS there. That's what you should do. If you own an altcoin and it's been bleeding against Bitcoin and you want to make yourself feel better, plot it on its EOS pair and know that you're outperforming someone.
Master trader.
No, it actually really is interesting that, I think a lot of people look at, the Bitcoin pairs and the ETH pair. I think you don't even need to look at the ETH pairs in Bitcoin dominance uptrends, just look at the Bitcoin pairs, but in Bitcoin dominance downtrends, look at the ETH pairs for each altcoin. But it's really interesting when you look at the relative valuations of some alts against others, right? So instead of comparing like what Rob was saying, like Pepe to Bitcoin, compare it to Doge or something, right? Compare it to another sort of a coin in its sort of sub asset class and see like how it's competing against those. Because a lot of times when you think about like a blue chip, Bitcoin is the blue chip of the entire industry, but within each sub asset class, you have like different blue chips. Like in DeFi or in sort of like last cycle with the NFTs. I mean, obviously the NFTs hardly could be considered blue chips at this point, but during the actual cycle where NFTs were doing well, like you had a few blue chips that just outperformed everything else. So it is interesting when you go down the rabbit hole of exploring altcoin valuations on their other altcoin valuation pairs. All right, so that it looks like we are at the top of the hour. So why don't we go ahead and someone says clowning on EOS. That means it's time to buy. Maybe that's true. I don't know. All right.
That's good.
Yeah, no, it was a coin from like 2017 where they did a huge
airdrops and
ICO or something. I don't remember exactly, but it just
$4 billion. $4 billion EOS raised, the largest ICO of them all. 4 billion. The ICO lasted a year.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable, and they have done nothing with it. And I think they invested in a lot, but yeah.
Yeah, they invested in their condos, and the SEC brought a case against them. And remember how much they paid? Like 120 million or something like that, like a pittance. And then that's it, and they're good. Another great job by Gary Gensler.
Yeah,
protecting this where we don't need it, but not doing what he needs to do when people are actually doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Right? I mean, like giving us hell about the spot ETFs for years, but then letting other stuff like that go on. It just seems like
whatever. I'm glad he's
all
gone.
right, guys.
I'm glad he's leaving.
So next week we will be on Rob's channel. Make sure you guys subscribe to Rob and Guy. Their links to their channels are in the description below. So make sure you guys check that out. And we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We got about 4,500 people viewing right now, so great to see everyone here. And we'll see how the rest of this cycle shapes up. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
See you guys.
See you, everyone. Thanks for watching.